How does one man rescue 7 people single-handedly, especially with a wounded leg? This story tells how the impossible became reality, and why the man they called Dead Weight became the greatest hero. Don't forget to subscribe and tell us in the comments which country and city you're watching from today. In the most treacherous mountainous regions of Afghanistan's Helmand province, an operation that began at 4:30 a.m. would end in a way nobody expected. The U.S. Army's 75th Ranger Regiment Alpha Team had reached the final and most critical phase of their highly classified reconnaissance operation that had been running for 4 full weeks. The objective was to capture the strategic Koisar Bridge under tight Taliban control and permanently cut off the region's most vital weapons supply routes. But that morning, the life of Staff Sergeant Ryan Mitchell, considered the weakest link, the most inexperienced member, and frankly viewed as dead weight, would change forever. Ryan was constantly referred to within the team as the problem child, a liability, and sometimes even a direct impediment to mission success. His 8 months of active combat duty meant virtually nothing compared to his teammates' 3 to 9 years of brutal, deadly warfare experience. Particularly the senior soldiers who had completed 3 lengthy tours in Iraq and participated in dozens of dangerous operations in Afghanistan continuously belittled Ryan, found him inadequate, and excluded him from the team. Team leader Major Jackson Hayes harbored deep, serious concerns about including Ryan in this critical operation that would put the entire team's lives at risk, and he constantly discussed this situation with other high-ranking commanders. Hayes had clearly stated to other officers at last month's comprehensive operation planning meeting at Fort Bragg, "This kid will definitely slow us down, make wrong decisions at critical moments, panic, and seriously endanger the team's safety." Experience aside, how he'll behave under stress is completely unknown. But the command order was definitive and non-negotiable. Ryan would definitely participate in this operation. According to official documents, he had successfully completed Ranger School, was technically qualified, and officially ready for operational duties. But how he would perform in real field conditions, under genuine death threats, remained a complete mystery. Ryan's joining the Army was no coincidence and had very personal, deep motivations. His father, Colonel David Mitchell, was a heroic commander who died in an IED attack in Ramadi during the bloodiest period of the Iraq War. His mother, Sarah Mitchell, strongly opposed her son following his father's dangerous and deadly path, but eventually had to surrender to Ryan's unwavering determination. Ryan had told the recruitment officer, "I will complete the mission my father couldn't finish. This world needs people who protect innocence and fight against evil. I want to be one of those people." The atmosphere within the team toward Ryan was genuinely harsh and exclusionary. Particularly the senior soldiers constantly tested him, magnified his small mistakes, and broadcast his failures to other members. Sergeant Jake Ramirez, 33 years old, whose wife Isabella had given birth to their 3rd child last year, was a tough-minded veteran who had served continuously in various war zones for 11 years. Ramirez constantly told Ryan, "Rookie, this isn't real war. Don't think we're playing games here. If you make a mistake, not just you die, we all die." Staff Sergeant Alex Morrison, 35 years old, whose father was a Medal of Honor recipient from the Vietnam War, was himself an experienced soldier with 13 years of active combat. Morrison's approach to Ryan was even more merciless. "This job is way over your head, kid. You don't even know the basics yet," he would constantly say. Staff Sergeant Brett Sullivan, 30 years old from Georgia, had served in harsh war conditions for 9 years and was a determined soldier fighting for his family. Sullivan never took Ryan seriously and constantly mocked him, The other team members were also distant toward Ryan, but at least they didn't show direct hostility. Private Luis Valdez, 27 years old, Puerto Rican, whose sister Carmen was studying mechanical engineering at university and desperately needed the salary his brother sent from the army. Valdez would ignore Ryan, but at least didn't treat him badly. Private Tyler Anderson, 25 years old from Michigan, came from a completely impoverished family, and the Army had provided him with regular income for the first time. Anderson was also neutral toward Ryan, neither supporting nor openly opposing him. Private Kevin Chen, 24 years old, Korean-American from Oklahoma, whose father was a retired soldier who had fought in Vietnam. Due to Chen's quiet nature, he didn't interact much with Ryan, but didn't show negative behavior toward him either. The team's initial preparation phase had lasted a full 2 weeks. During detailed planning meetings at Bagram Air Base, Ryan was constantly kept in the background, not included in important decisions, and his opinions were not sought. When Hayes explained operation details, he usually gave Ryan the simplest, least risky tasks requiring minimal responsibility. Ryan was aware of this, but didn't react. He didn't want to be a burden to the team or create problems. During the comprehensive equipment check on the final evening before the operation, the psychological pressure on Ryan reached its peak. While Ramirez cleaned his weapon, he told Ryan, "Rookie, tomorrow there's real death. Not exercises, not games. If you make a mistake, you'll destroy us all." Morrison was even harsher. "Ryan, if you endanger us tomorrow, I'll stop you myself. This isn't a threat, it's a promise." Sullivan spoke with a dismissive attitude. "Kid, don't try to keep up with us tomorrow. Just save your own skin, don't attempt anything else." The worst was Hayes's final pre-operation conversation. Hayes had pulled Ryan aside privately and said, "Soldier Mitchell, tomorrow is your first major operation. I don't expect any heroics, any initiative from you. Just follow orders, don't take unnecessary risks, and definitely don't slow down the team. If you cause problems, I'll leave you behind without hesitation and continue the operation. This isn't an empty threat." These words had deeply shaken Ryan's confidence, but also increased his determination. He had made this promise to himself. "Tomorrow, I'll show them the real Ryan Mitchell. I'll prove that I'm my father's son and that I'm as valuable as they are." On the night of the operation, Alpha Team took off from Bagram Air Base in 2 UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters at 3 a.m. under cover of darkness. They reached the target area in exactly 1 hour and 30 minutes. The main pilot, Major Steve Richardson, and co-pilot, Captain Lisa Park, were experienced soldiers accustomed to such covert infiltration operations. Throughout the flight, Ryan had nausea. His hands trembled uncontrollably, and his heart beat so fast it could be heard even under his tactical vest. This was his first real, large-scale combat operation. He had performed simulations thousands of times in training camp. But real bullets, real bombs, real enemies, real death risks were all completely new to him. The helicopters silently dropped them off at a secure landing zone covered with thick bushes and rocks exactly 5 kilometers from Kesar Bridge, then disappeared into the night darkness. The 7 members of Alpha Team were now in completely enemy-controlled territory, forced to operate with no external support, relying solely on their own abilities. Hayes gathered his entire team one last time and shared critical information. "Gentlemen, from this moment, we're in enemy territory," he said in a very low voice. "Every step we take is of vital importance. Kesar Bridge is Taliban's most critical supply point, and controlling this bridge will change the entire power balance in the region. If this operation succeeds, we'll disrupt Taliban operations in the region for months." The team made a continuous, silent, and extremely careful 7-hour march throughout the night, reaching within 3 kilometers of the bridge. Every step was calculated, every breath controlled, every sound made potentially a death warrant. Ryan walked at the back, struggling seriously under the weight of his 54-kilogram full battle-load equipment, but was determined not to voice his complaints. M4A1 carbine, 270 rounds, 4 M67 fragmentation grenades, AN/PVS-14 night vision goggles, PRC-152 radio, GPS, medical kit, 3 days of MRES, water, extra batteries. Everything was according to standard loadout, but heavy for Ryan. At 8:15 a.m., detailed reconnaissance activities began. Hayes systematically examined the bridge with military binoculars, identifying enemy positions one by one and assessing threat levels. The information in intelligence reports was completely wrong, and the situation was much more dangerous than expected. The report said there were only 6 to 8 Taliban militants, but Hayes counted at least 22 people with the binoculars. Moreover, not light weapons, but PKM machine guns, RPG-7s, and even 2 ZPU-1 anti-aircraft machine gun positions were present. Hayes quietly gathered his team around him and emphasized the seriousness of the situation. Gentlemen, intelligence was completely wrong. There are more than twice as many enemies here as reported, and they're equipped with heavy weapons. This is no longer a simple bridge capture operation. It's going to be a serious assault mission. He took out the tactical map and marked the new positions. Ramirez, Morrison, you'll take the right flank. You'll covertly infiltrate from the east side of the bridge and neutralize the main guard post. Sullivan, Valdez, you'll eliminate the heavy weapon positions from the left flank. Anderson, Chen, you'll be with me for the center assault. We'll secure the bridge entrance. Ryan waited, holding his breath and feeling his heartbeat. Sir, what's my mission? He asked, trying not to let his voice crack. A clear expression of hesitation appeared on Hayes's face. There was a long silence, as if he hadn't expected this question. Then he made his decision. Mitchell, you'll stay here, at this elevated position. You'll provide rear guard and escape route security. If the operation goes sideways, you're our only way out. Ryan's heart constricted. He felt breathless. Again, he was being placed in the rear, again in the safe zone. Again, he was being kept away from the real action. But there was no possibility of objecting to a military order. Roger, sir, he said, his voice barely audible. Ramirez approached, touching his shoulder friendly. Rookie, this isn't a bad assignment. Rear security is of critical importance. You're our lifeline, he said. Morrison also added, Ryan, this place might look safe, but it's actually the most important position. If we get pinned down, you're our only salvation. But Ryan knew these were just consolations. The truth was, they didn't trust him regarding combat effectiveness. At 8:45 a.m., the operation commenced. Ryan chose an elevated position among the rocks, beginning to monitor his team's advance toward the bridge from approximately 1,600 meters away with military binoculars. Thanks to his night vision capability, he could clearly see how his teammates were professionally approaching the bridge. These men were real professionals. Every movement was calculated, every step silent, every position optimal. The first 45 minutes proceeded according to Hayes's plan without problems. Ramirez and Morrison were successfully infiltrating from the right flank, covertly approaching the main observation post. Sullivan and Valdez had encircled the heavy weapon positions from the left flank and were waiting for the optimal moment. Hayes, Anderson, and Chen were coordinating the overall operation from the center position. At 9:52 a.m., an unplanned and very dangerous development occurred. While Ryan was scanning the surrounding area with his binoculars, he spotted 5 pickup trucks approaching from the north side of the bridge. This was Taliban reinforcement, and his team hadn't seen this threat yet. If these reinforcements reached the bridge, the Rangers would be completely encircled. He immediately opened his radio and tried to give an urgent warning. "Control, this is Observer. Critical situation. 5 vehicles approaching from north. Taliban reinforcements incoming. Team will be surrounded." But only intense static and crackling came from the radio. The signal had been completely cut. He tried again, tested different frequencies, but nothing worked. They couldn't hear him and didn't know about the danger. At that critical moment, the first automatic weapons fire that shattered the morning silence began echoing terrifyingly among the mountains. Taliban forces had detected the Rangers and opened heavy fire. And not just the original bridge guards, but about 45 Taliban fighters dismounting from the reinforcement vehicles had also joined the engagement immediately. The situation was much worse than planned. Ryan could understand how intense the battle was through the broken, static-filled voices coming from his radio. "Mayday! Mayday! Taking very heavy fire!" Hayes's voice was full of panic and desperation. "Cannot maintain our positions. Our situation is very bad. Control left flank calling. Cannot break contact from the DSHK heavy machine gun." Sullivan's scream. "Ramirez is seriously wounded. Need immediate medical assistance." Morrison's desperate voice. "We're losing Valdez. Too much blood loss." Anderson's panicked voice. Ryan couldn't stand it anymore and jumped up to help his team. But at that moment, Taliban sniper teams had also detected his elevated position. The first sniper round passed just 3 centimeters from his head with a whistle. The second round hit the rock beside him, scattering dangerous fragments. The third round grazed the upper part of his left leg, but created a deeper wound. Ryan fell to the ground in pain, feeling a sharp, burning sensation in his left leg. When he looked at his pants, he saw a large blood stain had formed. The bullet hadn't just grazed, it had gone deeper, and blood loss was rapidly increasing. The wound was more serious than he thought. The pain was truly unbearable. But Ryan had only one thing on his mind. His team. These people were his friends. Maybe they didn't love him, but he loved them. He tried to open his radio again, but the device was now completely damaged, and he couldn't receive any sound. The combat sounds continued, but were gradually decreasing. This was not a good sign at all. Ryan tried to stand up despite the severe pain in his leg. He stumbled on the first step and almost fell. On the second step, his leg couldn't carry his full weight, and he collapsed to the ground. His leg was seriously damaged, and normal walking had become impossible. But giving up wasn't an option. He began crawling, through rocks, through thorns, trying to slowly approach his team's position. Every meter of progress was torture. The sharp rocks made the wound worse, blood loss increased, and his head began to spin. But he didn't stop, didn't give up, kept crawling. "You can make it, Ryan," he murmured to himself. "They're your team, your family. You can't abandon them." At 10:47 a.m., the combat sounds suddenly stopped. Ryan waited with his heart pounding. Maybe his team had won. Maybe they had defeated the Taliban forces. Maybe they were withdrawing. But he had a bad feeling inside. 18 minutes later, a final message came from his radio. Hayes's voice, very weak. "Ryan, if you're receiving this, run immediately. Run now. They captured us. You're alone now. Return to base and report the situation. This is an order." The signal cut off. Ryan's world collapsed. His team had been captured, and he was wounded, alone, in the middle of Taliban-controlled territory. Ryan took some time to pull himself together. Then he crawled to a higher rocky outcrop, reaching a point where he could see the bridge clearly. From what he could observe, Taliban fighters were moving around the bridge area, and most devastatingly, 6 American soldiers were being forcibly loaded into trucks with their hands tied and heads bloodied. His team had literally been captured. In a line formation, hands zip-tied behind their backs, heads bloodied, some barely able to walk, they were being brutally loaded into Taliban trucks. Hayes was wounded, blood trickling from his forehead and nose. Ramirez's left arm was hanging limp, definitely broken. Morrison's eyes were swollen and his lip was split. Sullivan was limping, bleeding from his leg. Valdez and Anderson also appeared injured but could walk. Chen was in the worst condition, with 2 Taliban carrying him by his arms. This scene shattered Ryan's heart, multiplying his pain. These men were his team, his family, his brothers. Even if they had treated him badly, even if they had excluded him, he loved them. And now they were Taliban prisoners. Everyone knew how Taliban treated American prisoners, how they tortured them, how they ended their lives. If something wasn't done very quickly, he would never see these people again. But what exactly could he do? How could one man, wounded, with limited ammunition, rescue 6 people from a Taliban compound? Ryan began to analyze the situation as coolly as possible. His available resources: half-broken radio, 201 rounds of ammunition, 4 fragmentation grenades, basic medical supplies, 2 days of MRE food packets, sufficient water, GPS device, night vision goggles, and an open wound on his left leg. Disadvantages: being severely injured, being completely alone, being in enemy-controlled territory, no one knowing his location, limited ammunition. Advantages: the enemy not being aware of his presence, having comprehensive ranger training, relative familiarity with the terrain, Taliban assuming he was dead, and most importantly, having nothing left to lose. At 11:30 a.m., the Taliban convoy began moving north. Ryan decided to track them. From what he could observe with his binoculars, 6 vehicles were heading toward mountainous terrain, presumably to one of Taliban's main compounds. Before Ryan began moving, he absolutely had to deal with his leg wound. To prevent infection, he carefully cleaned it with antiseptic, tightly bandaged it, administered an antibiotic injection, and used a strong painkiller. His leg still hurt, but at least became capable of bearing weight. At 12 p.m., Ryan began tracking the Taliban convoy. Progressing through rugged, rocky, thorny, mountainous terrain with his injured leg was extremely difficult and painful. Every step created intense pain in his leg, but as he thought of his team, he found strength. Ramirez's wife, Isabella, had delivered their 3rd child last year, was now healthy, and Ramirez fought for her happiness. Morrison's father, Raymond, was a Medal of Honor winner from Vietnam, eagerly awaiting the day his son would return heroically. Sullivan had an elderly mother, Dorothy, living in Georgia. Her son was her only support. Valdez's sister, Carmen, was studying mechanical engineering at university, critically depending on her brother's military salary. Anderson had no family, but the team was his family. Chen also had immigrant parents who were proud of their military son. And Hayes wanted to return to his children as a heroic father. After exactly 4.5 hours of challenging tracking, Ryan approached the wide valley where the Taliban compound was located. In the center of the valley was a large camp, consisting of temporary but quite extensive tents. The trucks had gone exactly there. Ryan approached the compound from a safe distance, beginning reconnaissance from behind rocks. The camp was much larger than expected and much more dangerous. 16 main tents, 2 command tents, extensive vehicle parking area, large weapons and ammunition depot, fuel depot, and most notably, a specially guarded prisoner tent. The number of Taliban fighters was at least 50. All were armed with modern weapons, appeared trained, and were constantly on alert. Ryan was certain his team was definitely being held in that special prisoner tent, but he needed to get closer to be sure and see their condition. The sun was beginning to set. Darkness was his only and greatest advantage. At 7:15 p.m., the sun completely set, and total darkness began. Ryan went into action. Using the comprehensive concealment, infiltration, and sabotage techniques he had learned at Ranger School, he began infiltrating the compound. Despite his injured leg, every movement was flawless and calculated. He had to make no sound, leave no trace, and not be detected in any way. One mistake would mean certain death for both himself and his team. Completely infiltrating the compound took exactly 1.5 hours. He moved like a ghost between tents, learned the guards' shift change times minute by minute, determined patrol routes, and approached the prisoner 10 centimeter by centimeter, and finally the sounds he heard caused his heart to nearly stop. "The Americans will stay here until very early morning hours," said the guard outside the tent, speaking in Arabic. "Then our senior commander will come and get all the information from them. If they don't cooperate, you know what will happen." Very familiar voices were coming from inside the tent. Hayes's weak but determined voice. "Soldiers, our situation is very bad, but we will never give up. There may be no one coming to rescue us. We must take care of ourselves." Ramirez's very weak voice. "Commander, I'm wondering what happened to Ryan. Is he in a safe place?" Hayes. "I hope he was able to escape and reach the base. He was our only hope. But we must be realistic, probably he too." Morrison interrupted. "Ryan was just an inexperienced rookie, Commander. He couldn't know what to do in such critical situations. He probably panicked." Sullivan added, "Maybe it was for the best. At least he might have stayed safe." Valdez. "Yes. What would he do here anyway? He'd just be a burden to us." Hearing these harsh words, Ryan felt both great anger and unshakable determination rise within him. They still saw him as inexperienced, worthless, useless. They still didn't trust him. But tonight, on this meaningful night, he would show them the real Ryan Mitchell. Now the real and greatest challenge was beginning. Against 50 experienced Taliban fighters, alone, wounded, how would he successfully rescue 6 prisoners? Ryan began to comprehensively analyze and study the enemy count, layout, security measures, and patrol system in the compound. 50 fighters operated in a complex 6-hour shift system. Always 12 people on active guard duty, 6 people strictly securing the prisoner tent, 6 people continuously patrolling around the compound, 18 people resting in tents, 12 people conducting planning and coordination in command tents. Ryan's ammunition was quite limited. 201 rounds and 4 fragmentation grenades. Direct, open combat would be definite suicide. he had to develop a completely different, creative strategy. At 11:30 p.m., Ryan noticed the large fuel depot at the eastern edge of the compound. Large gasoline and diesel containers for all of Taliban's vehicles, and probably generator fuel as well. If he could detonate this, he could create great chaos, throw the entire compound into panic, and infiltrate the prisoner tent during this time. But how would he safely reach that depot? How would he effectively place the bombs? And how would he reach his team in time at the moment of explosion? The plan was extremely risky and dangerous, but there was no other choice. Ryan developed this complex strategy in detail. In the first phase, he would secretly infiltrate the fuel depot, place fragmentation grenades at strategic points, but not detonate them immediately. In the second phase, he would secretly approach very close to the prisoner tent and neutralize the guards silently and effectively. In the third phase, he would detonate the bombs, taking maximum advantage of the chaos and panic to quickly free his team. In the fourth phase, he would steal one of the most reliable vehicles in the compound and ensure safe escape. Every phase required perfect timing, flawless execution, and a bit of luck. A single mistake would mean complete failure of the plan and everyone's death. At 12:15 a.m., Ryan very carefully began the first phase. Approaching the fuel depot was absolutely the most risky and dangerous part of the compound. The depot was strategically positioned exactly in the center of the compound and was continuously protected by 4 guards. Ryan conducted patient observation for a full 50 minutes to learn the guards' complex patrol patterns and timing. Every 25 minutes, the guards systematically changed positions. This gave him only a 3 to 4 minute window. The first attempt was a complete failure. Ryan approached the depot, but one of the guards unexpectedly returned at an unplanned time. Ryan used his reflexes to quickly hide in the shadows, feeling as if everyone could hear his heartbeat. The second attempt was risky, but successful. He managed to reach the depot, placed 4 fragmentation grenades among the containers at strategic locations, but didn't immediately pull the pins. Instead, he constructed a sophisticated remote detonation system. He developed a system that could safely trigger from 70 meters away. This complex operation took exactly 13 minutes, and every second carried the threat of detection. At 1:30 a.m., the second phase critically began. He needed to approach the prisoner tent and neutralize the guards. The 2 main guards in front of the tent, had they noticed the modifications at the depot? Had they become suspicious? They weren't sure, but they appeared more alert. Ryan infiltrated the rear section of the tent like a ghost. He could clearly hear his team's familiar voices from inside. Hayes was giving weak but resolute commands. No military intelligence will be given to the Taliban. Only name, rank, service number. Nothing else will absolutely be revealed. Ramirez was murmuring in pain. "Ryan, I hope you're safe, son." These voices pierced Ryan's heart, but simultaneously multiplied his determination. The time for action had definitely come. At 2 a.m., Ryan transitioned to the third phase. He checked the remote detonation device one last time and activated it. 7 seconds later, the fuel depot exploded with a horrific, deafening noise. Flames rose 25 meters into the sky. The explosion sound reverberated throughout the valley for kilometers. Taliban fighters from everywhere in the compound began running and shouting. "Fire! American assault! Ambush!" they screamed. Ryan took maximum advantage of this great chaos and panic and rapidly assaulted the prisoner tent. The 2 guards in front of the tent were completely disoriented from the explosion and didn't know what to do. Ryan silently approached and very effectively neutralized them without giving them a chance to make a sound. When he entered the tent, his team's eyes widened incredibly at seeing him. Ryan? Hayes almost couldn't believe it. How are you? Weren't you wounded? Didn't you escape? What are you doing here? No time to talk, Commander, Ryan said, while rapidly releasing his team's restraints and bindings. There are at least 48 Taliban left in the compound. The fire is keeping them completely busy right now, but it won't last long. We must leave immediately. Ramirez couldn't believe it. Did you really come alone? Didn't you get any backup? I am the backup, Ryan said with a very determined and powerful voice. I couldn't abandon you. I never could. Morrison was still in shock. But you were just an inexperienced rookie. Ryan firmly interrupted him. I'm not a rookie or anything. I'm your teammate, your brother. And absolutely no one abandons their brother. Sullivan, while standing up. Ryan, how's your leg? I see blood traces, he said with concern. It'll manage, Ryan said. But now we must leave immediately. I have a comprehensive plan. Valdez asked, What kind of plan? Ryan pointed outside the tent. There are vehicles at the compound's main entrance. We'll steal one. In the west direction, 2.5 kilometers away, there's a safe valley. From there we can establish secure radio communication with the base. Anderson. But how will we steal the vehicles? There are too many Taliban around, he said. Ryan smiled with determination. The fire is keeping them completely busy and they're panicking. And I'll show you how effective and capable the man you called inexperienced really is. Chen said with admiration. Ryan, you really look completely transformed. Hayes. Affirmative, soldiers. We'll listen to and implement Ryan's plan. He brought us here safely, and he'll get us out safely too. After the team was completely freed, Ryan carefully directed them toward the rear of the compound. The Taliban fighters were still completely engaged in fire suppression efforts and were panicking. The largest trucks were parked in a safe location away from the fuel depot, close to the compound's main entrance. Ryan explained the detailed plan. I'll go alone to the largest truck and start the engine. You'll wait here hidden. When the engine starts and you see my signal, you'll run to me. You'll have exactly 120 seconds. If you're even 1 second late, we'll miss the opportunity. Ramirez was concerned. It's extremely risky. You're in wounded condition. We can't leave you completely alone. Ryan, with unwavering determination. This is the only method and the most secure method. If 7 people approach simultaneously, we'll definitely be detected. A single person approaching provides a real opportunity. Hayes. Ryan is absolutely correct. We'll implement his plan precisely. You're in command. At 2:45 a.m., Ryan moved toward the truck like a ghost. In the compound interior, illuminated by large flames, Taliban fighters were totally focused on fire suppression and were panicking. Ryan reached the largest truck by making maximum use of shadows and smoke. The door was unlocked, thankfully. He silently entered the interior and searched for the ignition key. The key was absent, of course. He had to make a wire connection, one of the advanced techniques he learned in military training. He carefully began opening the complex wires under the steering wheel. He located the red and black main wires and very carefully connected their tips. The engine growled, but didn't start. Second attempt. This time he also included the yellow power wire. The engine started powerfully. At that critical moment, an armed Taliban fighter suddenly appeared immediately next to the truck. "Halt! Who's there?" he shouted in Arabic. Ryan quickly jumped out of the window and effectively neutralized the fighter without giving him a chance to make a sound. But he had been discovered now. Detected. Taliban from other parts of the compound had begun running. "Now! Immediately now!" Ryan shouted. The team ran to the truck rapidly. Hayes took the steering wheel. The others quickly boarded the back. Ramirez was still wounded. Morrison and Sullivan provided assistance. When the truck began moving powerfully, the Taliban immediately opened heavy fire. Automatic weapon rounds were violently impacting the glass and metal surfaces. Valdez shouted, "Get your heads down immediately!" Hayes pressed the accelerator to the maximum while steering. The truck began distancing itself from the compound at great speed, but Taliban pursuit had immediately begun. 9 motorcycles and 3 pickup trucks were approaching from behind. "Ryan," Hayes said while steering, "immediately transition to the rear. You must stop them." Ryan rapidly transitioned to the rear of the truck. He took his M4A1 rifle and carefully aimed at the Taliban motorcycles. First shot. It missed. Second shot. Perfect impact. One of the motorcycles overturned. The rider was thrown to the ground. Sullivan gave an urgent warning. "Ryan, rapidly approaching from the left." Ryan quickly turned left, took very careful aim, and fired while controlling his breath. Perfect impact. The second motorcycle immediately stopped. The third, fourth, and fifth motorcycles were still determined in their tracking, the riders continuously firing with automatic weapons. Rounds were dangerously impacting the truck's rear door and sides. Anderson said, "I'll fire too." Ryan said determinedly, "Negative. Let's not waste ammunition. This is completely my responsibility." Ryan took extremely careful aim. The truck was in moving state. The targets were rapidly moving. The distance was approximately 70 meters. He controlled his deep breathing, achieved perfect concentration, and expertly pulled the trigger. Perfect impact. The third motorcycle overturned. 2 more motorcycles were approaching, and there was also a pickup truck following behind. The situation was becoming progressively more dangerous. Chen, in wounded state, gave an alarm. "Ryan, attention! They're extracting an RPG from the pickup." Ryan understood the situation. If that RPG fired, the truck would be completely destroyed. He needed to eliminate the motorcycles first, then focus on the pickup. He conducted 2 rapid, consecutive shots. Both achieved impact. The final 2 motorcycles were also neutralized. Now only the pickup remained. But this was the most dangerous. 3 Taliban were inside. 1 was aiming with an RPG. Ryan aimed at the RPG operator in the pickup. The distance was far. The truck was rapidly proceeding. The target was moving. He needed to make the most challenging shot. He achieved total concentration, held his breath, and fired with perfect timing. Impact. The RPG operator collapsed. The pickup was still tracking, but the threat level had decreased. Morrison warned, "Ryan, someone from the pickup is firing with an automatic weapon." Final shot. Ryan aimed at and fired at the second Taliban in the pickup. Impact. The pickup lost control, exited the road, and overturned. Valdez shouted with victory. "No pursuit remaining." The truck continued proceeding toward the safe valley in the west direction. After exactly 65 minutes, they arrived at the secure, protected location. Hayes stopped the engine. Everyone could finally breathe comfortably. Ramirez approached Ryan's proximity, with admiration in his eyes. "Ryan, I owe you an enormous apology. We completely underestimated you. You're a genuine warrior, a genuine ranger." Morrison sincerely added, "Ryan, what you conducted tonight is completely incredible. You rescued us single-handedly while in wounded condition. This is a legendary achievement." Sullivan said emotionally, "If my mother heard this story, she would want to meet you and thank you personally." Valdez. My sister Carmen owes you endless gratitude. If you hadn't existed, I would never see her again, and she couldn't have completed her education. Anderson and Chen approached together. Ryan, you're definitely our leader now. We trust you completely. But the most important, most meaningful statement came from Major Hayes. Ryan, I openly confess that I was completely prejudiced and unjust toward you. I perceived you as inexperienced, unprepared, even dangerous. But tonight, you perfectly demonstrated what genuine courage and genuine leadership mean. You didn't just rescue us, you also reminded all of us of the true meaning of team camaraderie. From now on, we won't participate in any mission or duty without you, I promise. Ryan smiled tiredly but happily. Commander, I merely performed my duty. No one abandons their teammate, their brother. My father would have done the same. At 4:30 a.m., the team established radio communication in the Safe Valley. A strong connection was achieved with Bagram Base, and emergency evacuation helicopter was requested. 50 minutes later, 2 UH-60 Black Hawks arrived and safely extracted them all. During the flight, Ryan observed the exterior from the window, thinking about the burning Taliban compound they had left behind. A few hours ago, Ryan, who was the team's weakest link and deadweight, was now the team's undisputed hero. When they arrived at Bagram Base, it was 6 a.m. Comprehensive medical examination was immediately conducted. The doctor examining Ryan's leg wound said, "You're very fortunate, young man. The bullet missed the major artery by a few millimeters. If it had been a few centimeters closer, you could have lost your leg." But for Ryan, the most important thing was his team's healthy return. Ramirez underwent surgery. His broken arm was successfully corrected. Morrison's swollen eyes and wounds were treated. Sullivan's leg wound was cleaned. Valdez, Anderson, and Chen's wounds were minor. Bandaging and rest were sufficient. 3 days later, Ryan, who was resting in the hospital room, was visited by his entire team with special gifts. Ramirez brought flowers and a laptop. "Ryan, my wife Isabella is sending you special greetings," he said. On the laptop screen, Isabella was smiling and waving. "Ryan, you saved our family. Our baby will have your name as a middle name," the message displayed. Morrison brought a letter from his father, Raymond. "Son, your teammate is a genuine hero. I want to meet him. Give him my Purple Heart medal," it was written. Sullivan brought a specially made cake from his mother in Georgia. "My mother specially prepared this for you. Georgia peach cake," he said. Valdez brought a letter from his sister Carmen. "Endless appreciation to my brother's teammate. When I get my engineering diploma, my first responsibility will be to thank you," it was written. Anderson and Chen brought a gift, the Ranger's special badge. "This is a special badge, Ryan. It's only presented to genuine warriors," they said. Hayes also sat beside Ryan's bed and spoke with a serious expression. "Ryan, I discussed with Colonel Peterson. There's an offer for you. Assistant leadership of Alpha Team. If you want, you'll be responsible for tactical planning in the next operation." Ryan's eyes became emotional. "Sir, this is a tremendous honor. I accept." Hayes smiled. "And one more thing. You've been assigned a new code name. You're not a rookie anymore. Your code name is now Guardian, Protector, because you protected all of us." 1 month later, an official ceremony was conducted at Fort Bragg. Ryan was presented with the Silver Star Medal, one of the highest levels of courage medals. The entire team was present at the ceremony. General Matthews, who presented the medal. "Staff Sergeant Mitchell, what you conducted is an example rarely seen in genuine military courage. You risked your own life to rescue 6 team members. You executed an operation single-handedly while in wounded condition in enemy territory. This is the definition of genuine heroism. But for Ryan, the real reward was the respect in his teammates' eyes. They no longer called him Rookie. They now called him Guardian. 6 months later, Ryan became the leader of Alpha Team. Hayes received a promotion. Major Ryan became the new team leader. His first operation was in the same previously Taliban-controlled region. But this time, no one was abandoned. This time, everyone appreciated the value of each team member. From that day forward, a new tradition began in the 75th Ranger Regiment. Never abandon anyone. Because the person you abandon might be the one who saves your life. Ryan's story wasn't just a rescue operation. It was proof of how prejudices can be shattered, what genuine courage means, and why no one should be judged by appearance. Because sometimes, the most unexpected person can become the greatest hero. The team now had 2 rules: the Guardian Principle and the Team Spirit Doctrine. The Guardian Principle specified that no one could be abandoned, while the Team Spirit Doctrine reminded everyone that everyone was a potential hero. After this incident, Ryan didn't just become the team's leader, he simultaneously became the team's heart. Because he didn't just rescue 6 people. He also educated everyone about what genuine friendship, sacrifice, and brotherhood mean. The first story told to every new ranger was Guardian Ryan's story. One day you might also encounter difficult situations, they were told. At that time, remember, no one is completely alone. Genuine strength originates from being together. What does this story remind you of? Has anyone in your life ever underestimated you but then understood your genuine value? Or have you ever incorrectly evaluated someone and then regretted it? Share in the comments and write what this story made you feel. If you want to continue hearing such genuine hero stories, don't forget to subscribe.